Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling a really critical transformation point for, I think, anyone involved in high stakes long-term work.
Hmm.
We're trying to move beyond just being busy or, incredibly passionate
Right.
and told something much more robust, being fruitfully, sustainably effective. Our mission today is to give you a shortcut into understanding the Missions Quotient, the MQ framework.
And that question of endurance, of legacy, it matters more than ever right now. We're in a
Yeah.
world of such rapid change, such cultural complexity,
Yeah.
and our sources make it really clear that the stakes are incredibly high. The biggest danger isn't necessarily, you know, outright failure. It's exhausting yourself on something that just doesn't last.
That is the core tension. Our sources open with this defining story that really drives the point home.
It's a powerful one.
It was a stark, painful observation of a highly gifted missionary team, a team with immense zeal, tons of talent,
Absolutely.
top performing, collapsing. Just collapsing under cultural and relational pressures. It wasn't a failure of devotion.
No, not at all. It was a structural collapse. They neglected their integrated capacities.
So they were maybe good at one or two things.
Exactly. They might have been a 10 out of 10 on, say, charisma and fundraising, but they were. They were zeroed out in cultural intelligence or spiritual depth, and the whole system just failed.
Wow.
Success, especially in these fields, aiming for long-term transformation, it has to be holistic. If that foundation is weak, the visible fruit will always wither under pressure.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The MQ framework. You're saying it's like the lived architecture of effective mission.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's designed to transform these single-factor measures of success, like counting numbers or tasks completed, into something that has integrated, lasting impact. So our goal for this deep dive is to define those 8 critical dimensions of MQ, see how they work together, and give you some practical strategies to transform your own efforts.
If we look historically, especially in ministries and global movements, there was often this huge emphasis on what was immediately visible.
The easy-to-measure stuff.
The easy-to-measure stuff, short-term quantifiable results, a dependence on one charismatic leader, or just a singular technical skill.
Right, like being a great speaker or project manager.
Exactly.
That sounds almost like a business model focused purely on, Q3 earnings. But why is that obsolete now?
Because the world has fundamentally changed. The sources explain that this single-factor model, it just doesn't work with the complexity of the digital age, the constant movement of populations, or the reality of what scholars now call polycentric Christianity.
Polycentric meaning not just centered in one place anymore.
Precisely. The faith isn't centered in a few Western hubs. It's thriving, it's leading from the global South and East, and that requires highly decentralized, locally reproducible, and culturally specific approaches.
So just dropping a charismatic individual into a new environment. They might get some quick results, but they don't have the ethical roots or the cultural insight to build something that lasts without them.
Precisely. The old paradigm was results now, tied to a personality. The new MQ paradigm is all about alignment and enduring fruit.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The MQ model, it completely flips the focus. It argues that effectiveness flows from the alignment of your internal formation with your external competence.
Yes, the inside-out approach.
It's not just about what you do outside. It flows from your spiritual depth paired with your cultural intelligence.
And your relational trust, reinforced by an adaptive strategy. It's a full 360-degree system.
So the foundational idea here, it's completely redefining effectiveness.
It is. It says we have to measure what endures and what multiplies, not just the immediate success or how visible the achievement is. I mean, if your success only lasts as long as you're physically there,
If the whole thing folds when you leave.
then it wasn't truly reproducible. The MQ framework insists on a model that values ethical integrity and true reproducibility over just being visible.
All right, let's get into the architecture itself. The MQ framework has these 8 integrated dimensions. I think we can group them logically to make them a bit easier to, retain and apply.
It helps to see the structure.
First up is the internal base, what the sources call the root and endurance.
The non-negotiable foundation.
And the first dimension is spiritual depth, which is defined as the root that sustains everything else. It's the engine room.
And think about what happens when that root is neglected. Everything else, all your skills, all your strategies, they become fragile.
Brittle competence. I like that phrase.
That's what it is. It works until stress hits. And when a crisis comes, that leader defaults to organizational survival mode. They start burning through relationships and resources because their own internal well is dry.
And paired right with that is resilience and perseverance. Now, my first thought when I read that was, okay, that's just being tough.
Right, just grit.
But the sources make a really important distinction.
They do. It's not just toughness. The sources define it as faithfulness under prolonged obedience.
Faithfulness under prolonged obedience.
Yeah. Toughness might help you power through one bad quarter. But faithfulness is the capacity to stay true to your mission when the challenges last for 5 years, when the funding is low, when the culture isn't responding. It's that long-term ethical staying power.
Okay, so if that character piece is the root, let's look at the connection it needs to the outside world, the people component. This feels paramount today.
It is. This is cultural and relational intelligence.
Which is defined as the disciplined practice of understanding and loving others before you act.
That last part is key. Before you act. This is the essential skill for navigating that polycentric world we talked about. Without it, you are constantly making costly cultural mistakes.
Like the team in the opening story.
Exactly like that team.
Can you give me another example? What does a lack of this look like in practice?
Absolutely. The sources talk about leaders who try to replicate a structure that worked in one context. Say, a top-down, centralized decision-making system. And they try to plan it in a culture that demands collective, decentralized consensus. The leader sees efficiency, but the local team sees disrespect and exclusion.
And that causes irreparable fractures.
Total breakdown of trust. No future buy-in. MQ demands you learn the local language of leadership first.
Which leads us right into the dimensions of the intentional alignment. First is missional mindset and sacrificial commitment.
So the missional mindset is your clarity on why you exist. The sacrificial commitment is your willingness to pay the cost.
But there was a huge takeaway here about the type of sacrifice.
Yes. We have to evaluate which sacrifices are, quote, life-giving and mission-effective versus those that are harmful or misplaced.
That's a fascinating nuance. I mean, we tend to glorify all sacrifice, don't we? So what would a harmful sacrifice look like?
A harmful sacrifice often masquerades as devotion. It might be a leader who consistently sacrifices their family time, their health, their team's rest for tasks that honestly could be delegated. The organization gets a short-term win, but the leader eventually burns out, their family is fractured, and the mission loses its core model of integrity. MQ demands strategic sacrifice, not just self-destructive sacrifice.
And finally, that brings us to the multiplication engine. This is the practical delivery system, adaptive strategy and reproducibility.
This is how you ensure your efforts don't just survive, they actively thrive and multiply beyond you. Adaptive strategy means you're constantly monitoring and adjusting your approach.
Without losing your core principles.
Without losing your principles. And reproducibility means you aren't building an empire centered on your talent. You're installing local systems and developing local leadership.
So if I'm getting this right, the synergy here, the real power of MQ, it isn't just that I'm, good at 8 separate things.
No, not at all.
It's that my spiritual depth that fuels my sacrificial commitment.
Exactly. It's the engine.
And then that gets filtered through my cultural intelligence. And that's what lets me build a strategy that's actually reproducible.
That is the integrated view. Precisely. And when all 8 dimensions are aligned, the sources show that teams can navigate hostility without fracturing and innovate without compromising. It becomes an integrated, lifelong vocation.
Okay, defining the framework is one thing. Navigating the real world with scarce resources and high pressure is another. So what does this all mean for practical leadership?
Well, the path to high NQ isn't easy. The sources point out these inevitable challenges time and again. Short-term thinking that always puts the urgent over the important.
Right, the tyranny of the urgent.
Exactly. Then you have cultural missteps that destroy years of trust, burnout from those misplaced sacrifices we just talked about, and organizational silos where nobody's talking to each other.
And all of that undermines long-term effectiveness. But these can be addressed intentionally, right?
They can, using strategies built right into the framework. The first is prioritizing consistency over novelty.
What does that look like?
It means establishing regular, non-negotiable rhythms. Rhythms of spiritual formation, deep reflection, objective assessment. It's the small, consistent things, like a weekly, dedicated 2-hour block for silence and planning, rather than chasing the next shiny program.
And you can't do that alone. The sources emphasize community and mentorship.
It's essential. It's not a nice to have. You need it for accountability, for sharing insights from failure. You just can't do this deep work alone without developing some serious blind spots.
Okay, what's next?
Adaptive innovation. This is the antidote to rigid thinking. It means you embrace flexibility without sacrificing your core principles. You test small strategies with humility, get feedback, and learn, rather than sticking to a 5-year plan that clearly isn't working.
And all of this has to be built on ethical stewardship.
That's the foundation for sustainability. It grounds every decision in integrity and cultural respect. You simply cannot build a lasting movement on questionable ethics.
The MQ principles also seem to fundamentally alter how you assess priorities, especially in a crisis.
They do. The source material has this critical reflection exercise. It's a high-leverage filter. You analyze an initiative, a new project, a hiring decision, and you have to determine if it was driven primarily by organizational survival or kingdom impact.
That's a powerful and probably uncomfortable filter. How do those two things differ in practice?
Organizational survival is driven by fear. We have to keep the doors open. We must maintain the budget. We have to look successful to donors. Kingdom impact is driven by the mission. What's the most effective, reproducible, ethical way to serve the people we're called to, even if it doesn't make our org chart look tidy? The survival instinct often leads to cutting corners. The impact instinct drives collaboration. And this whole framework is about intentionality. It's not accidental success. For you, the learner who wants actionable knowledge, MQ offers these immediate next steps.
It really pushes for a deliberate quarter-by-quarter plan for improvement.
That's right. The first step is to conduct your MQ self-assessment. You have to take the time to rate your current capacity across all 8 dimensions, maybe on a scale of 1 to 5.
And the key reflection prompt here is critical. Which dimension are you overestimating because you confuse passion with competence? And which are you dangerously neglecting?
Exactly.
Once you have that baseline, you set focused learning goals. You just choose one MQ dimension to deepen each quarter. You don't try to fix everything at once.
It's manageable. Maybe this quarter is cultural intelligence. Next quarter, you focus on your reproducibility systems, and you integrate reflection and mentorship into that process.
And then you have to develop a reproducibility plan. You create actual concrete strategies to transfer knowledge and cultivate local leadership.
Your work has to be built to thrive without you. I mean, that is the mark of a truly successful mission.
And finally, establish accountability structures. You form peer or team partnerships to monitor your progress and maintain that ethical integrity. You have to ask, who is allowed to speak truth into my blind spots?
And to make this really actionable, let's look at 2 specific exercises from the sources that drive deep change. The first is the Burnout Early Warning Audit. This is about proactive prevention. You list your current stressors and the early, subtle signs of burnout. Are you snapping at people? Is your quiet time rushed?
Are you obsessively checking email at 10 p.m.?
Exactly. Then you proactively create a weekly rhythm that incorporates rest and reflection before the crisis hits. It turns rest into a mission-critical component. You're protecting the root.
The second one is the delegation audit, which is so crucial for that reproducibility dimension.
Yes, leaders are challenged to identify an area where they can delegate authority, not just responsibility.
What's the difference?
Responsibility means you still check the work. Authority means you let the local leader own the outcome and the learning that comes from it.
And the deeper challenge in that audit
is that leaders have to reflect on what stops them from releasing control. Is it ego? Is it fear of failure? Is it a lack of trust? That resistance that reveals the core issues that prevent you from developing the next generation of leaders. Mission effectiveness is cultivated. It's not something you stumble into just by working harder. Every decision, every relationship, every strategy, it either reinforces or undermines your legacy. The MQ view forces you to examine your calling through the lens of ethics, character, and sustainable impact. Your work should ultimately outlive you.
And that idea of an enduring legacy is where we want to leave you today. If your mission strategy right now were measured entirely in disciples multiplied rather than tasks completed, what single key assumption about your leadership or strategy would you need to release immediately to lead in a way that truly multiplies long-term impact? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into your source material and the Missions Quotient framework. We encourage you to embrace this holistic view, conduct your self-assessment, lead faithfully, and watch as the fruit of your labor transforms communities and outlives you.